All right, James, feel free to advance onto our goals. Thank you so much. With such a short time together today, our main goal is to elaborate on our Louisiana Department of Ed vendor listing and provide some faces and details to you while we start to understand more about what information is important to potential school and district partners. Whether you've been able to offer primetime programming before through specific grants and funding opportunities, or this is your first time exploring primetime, we hope that you will come away from the time with an understanding of how investing in primetime for the students and families of your schools can lead to long-term improvements and connections with literacy, learning, and your school communities. You see our goals here are to review the primetime history and vision. We're going to share some of the supports that come along with offering primetime. Then we'll do a general overview of all of our program offerings. I have some slides to reflect on budget and provide you a little more detail there. And then we'll have our time for Q&A and close with just a few very simple next steps. So in the next few slides, we will provide you with a basic understanding of the what and the how of primetime. But as we start, I wanted to be sure and take a few minutes to introduce the all-important who of primetime. I'm Shelley Stalker. I'm the Vice President of Education Programs here at the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities, and primetime is a project of the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities. I'm joined by our Director of Curriculum and Content Development, Sarah DeBacher, and our primetime program managers, Lacey Cunningham, James Brown, no relation, and Christina Lott. Our program staff has 3 to 5+ years implementing primetime across the state and the country. And we have worked in a wide variety of educational settings, from Head Start to doctoral programs, with focuses ranging from social work and social emotional learning, student and adult writing, to theater and performance education as well. We are all passionate about the humanities and harnessing storytelling and discussion to elevate intergenerational learning and to nurture lifelong learners. I'm now going to pass it on to Sarah DeBacher, who's going to give you a kind of a wider overview of where we came from and what we can offer.
Thank you, Shelley, and thank you to all of you who are here. I can't see you, which doesn't drive me crazy, but I do want to see you. I'm grateful to you for making time to be with us today. I get to talk about the fun stuff, which is what makes primetime unique and important. And I want to start by saying that often when people think about primetime family reading, we come up with ideas about what literacy means, right? And what it means to be a reading program. And I think we can think about like read alouds and those sort of librarian-centered or storyteller-centered or even teacher-centered approaches to literacy. But for 30 years, starting in 1991, primetime has really been focused on an approach to literacy and an understanding of literacy that is much broader than comprehension, or and said with love, more broader and more comprehensive than approaches that feature rote considerations of who, what, when, where, and why, right? We know that it's important that students can say those things back to us. What happened in this story? Who are the main characters? What is the plot? What are the primary themes? But our approach to literacy is really collaborative, and it focuses on the notion that literacy and its development begins in the lap of the family, and that the parent or caregiver, or as we call them, the grown-up, because we really understand that in Louisiana, there are families that look all different ways, that the grown-up is an integral part of shaping a child's relationship with reading and to their development of literacy. If you're interested in some of the philosophical or theoretical underpinnings, educational, pedagogical, theoretical underpinnings of our approach to literacy, I highly recommend this book by Gholdy Muhammad. It's called Cultivating Genius. This is a recent book. Finding it for me, somebody who studies education, was really revelatory because it helped me put a name on the things that we have been doing through our Library of Congress award-winning methodology for 30 years. And I'm just gonna this is on page 32, if you have this book and you nerd out like me. Literacy in this book and in primetime programs is viewed as the means of building reading and writing skills and knowledge, as well as the means to shape our identities and our critical understandings of ourselves, our communities, and the world. And we do this by using materials, children's books that are developed in partnership with humanities scholars, early childhood development experts, and through the development of curriculum discussion guides that focus on open-ended questions. So again, not who, what, when, or where, so much as why. And through an approach that really puts the facilitators, the trained team, and those would be teachers at your schools, the trained team, it puts those facilitators in partnership with families in developing a sense of identity through reading and talking about the big ideas found in children's books together. So we really believe that everyone who comes to a primetime program comes inherently with the same inherent capability as anyone else. Cultivating genius means that everyone in a primetime program is in partnership with one another. We're all geniuses. And our approach is really meant to be joyful as well as substantive, so that this idea of taking root, what really takes root is learning and an approach to literacy that is really, that centers the participants, the parent and the child, and then puts them in community with y'all, with their school communities and those and the people who surround them. I realize all of that probably sounds very amoebic and big, like these are big ideas. I'm going to pass the baton to my colleague, Christina Lott, who will talk a little bit more about what it looks like to partner through primetime, what those literary societies that you might be having in your schools might look like.
All right, thank you, Sarah. So primetime is amazing for multiple reasons, but one of which, let me make sure. Yeah, great. I'm not muted. But our program is amazing too, because we provide you with all the supports that you'll need to be successful. Our program is 100% turnkey, and we offer a variety of supports, such as help from our staff, which might look like live training, online modules, and an ongoing support to brainstorm any solutions that you might need to your program. And we also offer other supports such as materials and supplies. So that looks like series guides, manuals, ongoing webinar supports with the larger primetime community or family, as we like to call them, working together to kind of think together on how to provide quality primetime experiences for your families and communities. So we offer a ton of resources so that way you have all that you need to have a successful primetime program, depending on whichever you offer. And Shelley will say a little bit more now about the different primetime programs that we have available.
Thank you both so much. Before I go on, I would like to just ask Sarah. Sarah, could you talk just a minute about how our books are selected and we approach our series before I go through the suite of programs? We can leave the suite of programs slide up, James, but Sarah, could you mind mentioning just a little bit about how our series were developed over time?
Sure. So each primetime series, book series, and these are the programs like family reading and preschool, there are books that are appropriate to the age level of the readers, but that are focused on the humanities. So again, these big ideas that, the big ideas that are found in the humanities include things like justice, fairness, community, home, And each of the series sort of has a broad, almost like a big question or a very big broad theme. And then there are each text has a theme that sort of is held under the umbrella of that larger theme. So for instance, we developed a series in partnership with a humanities scholar and also a trauma-informed specialist that we released through our Primetime Spark boxes during the pandemic. And we understood that during the pandemic, what really needed to happen is families were, and in fact, we know this because we surveyed our families and we surveyed our site teams, families wanted to talk about the moment. And so our approach in that series, which was called Primetime Cares, was to find books that allowed families to use open-ended questions, and the site teams who were at the time meeting virtually to use open-ended questions to get at ideas like, what do you do when you're really struggling to cope with things not going the way you wanted them to? There's a wonderful book by Oge Maru named Saturdays, where the daughter and her grandmother spend every Saturday, they have a plan every Saturday. Well, things do not go as planned. And it, on the face of it, it's just a story about a daughter and a grandmother who are dealing with that disappointment. But through the use of open-ended questions and our methodology and the discussion guide, that book allowed parents and children to talk safely together about, well, what do we do now? And what kinds of things do you need at this moment when you're not able to go to school, et cetera. So each of the series is really based on responding to the subjects that are important to families, that are timely and relevant, and then have open-ended discussion guides that help families safely approach what can be some, quite frankly, seemingly like don't go there topics. We do go there, but we do that safely, and we do that in partnership with scholars and experts. I hope that answered the question, probably in too many words, but I always get excited about it. So thanks for letting me talk again.
Absolutely, Sarah. Thank you. I hope that it was helpful to others. It's always helpful for me to think about the way that we bring these series together, the award-winning children's literature, and really package it in a way that allows for those big conversations. As you can see on this slide, this is the suite of our programs. As Christina mentioned, and we've said over and over again today, the model for Primetime is meant to be very simple and turnkey. It allows parents to fully inhabit their role as their students' first and ongoing educator while partnering with schools to support the student literacy goals. School site staff are trained, as we mentioned, to facilitate these sessions and really centering participating children and adults with a humanities lens by not only modeling read aloud strategies of high quality children's books, but also facilitating engaging discussions on each of the story's themes. Virtual, in-person, and remote options are available, as well as professional development opportunities that make the most sense for the schools that we partner with. For family reading and for preschool programs, they create a learning space, kind of a third space for students with family members, site-selected appropriate staff, and those staff inhabit three main roles. That is the scholar, the storyteller, and the program coordinator. Also in family reading, we have a role called the preschool assistant that can be added for families with several different age groups within your group. So if you have folks 6 to 10 year olds that are participating in family reading and they have younger siblings, the preschool assistant can be added to help support those students during the programming. All of the roles are trained by Primetime staff with ongoing support throughout the implementation. And then when meeting in person, there's also a shared meal that takes one more stress off caregivers and creates a more collegial and comfortable environment. When we're doing virtual programming, we have shortened down our program session. I'm going to show you a sample of the program session here in just a moment, so that it allows for a real focus on engagement. And what we found is we have been able to overcome kind of the screen fatigue that lots of schools were seeing with their kids. And this is time after the school day, back at home, where they're logging in, not just on their own, facing a screen and an educator, but in the family. I know even for myself and my sons, when we join in, we're snuggled up on the couch, and it's just a whole different kind of experience. The Spark boxes, the Primetime Spark boxes, are currently available in our Care series, which Sarah just did an overview of how that series was developed and kind of the larger themes that it explores. And it provides an analog option for families or communities that would benefit from standalone supports. We find that this can be a really big boon right before break periods, or as people are coming back to kind of get families and students thinking about reading. And they develop their own, that starts to develop a family library as well, as all of our programs do. And then a homeroom is our professional development offering. All of our homeroom offerings focus educators and, when included, family members on our methodology, which is student-centered learning that creates personal connections between school, family, within families, with literature. And the methodology really encourages collective learning strategies and promotes respectful, diverse learning communities while developing higher level thinking skills. I've also included, as part of our suite, our Head Start offerings. As Head Start grant recipients, we really understand the value of family engagement and literacy development on site programs and site outcomes. Running Head Start ourselves provides us with a unique perspective, and I hope allows us to connect that work with our school partners so that they are able to really achieve their own specific goals. So what does a typical program actually look like? This is a typical program in person, and you see how we kind of break down that time. We start with the registration, we have the meal, we have a book walk. Sometimes that's also table talk, where we just have questions about the themes, but definitely we have the books available for folks to look at. Then we always rep the library in the area that we're working. And then you see the breakdown. The green and purple is for family reading, and the orange and light blue goes into how preschool is arranged. And then finally, we end with an excitement for about the next session. Each component of the 6-week sessions are designed to be done with families. You've heard us say that already, but I want to really emphasize that over and over again. Site team members are trained to center children and parents in all aspects, from registration to door prizes. Site teams are supported in the development of strategies to ensure that the meal is an opportunity not just to remove the barrier I talked about earlier of one less thing to think about, but really to connect with one another, to build community and get families excited for that session, story sharing and discussion. One of the site team members that we train are program coordinators, and they introduce the session stories and other community resources in a way that is purposeful and encourages participating families to potentially also share resources that they're aware of and that they can share between families as well. Our storytellers and preschool facilitators read aloud in approachable ways. This is not a story performance, but it's read aloud in a way that supports everyone's connection with each story. They launch discussions about big ideas and elicit responses from children and from adult participants. So the full group is talking and are playing when it comes to preschool purposely with each other. And finally, each session ends with a celebration of what has been shared and door prizes that are selected to enrich the lives of participants as much as they incentivize coming back. The next couple of slides, I've provided some very basic budget samples for offering Primetime. This sample is for a preschool set up with 30 participants per program sites, spread over 4 deliveries. And you'll see that on the first delivery, we have some upfront costs that peter out later on in the delivery, and we have some costs that remain constant. In this example, the same staff would serve in the site roles for each program delivery, which allows us to cut down on the number of training costs. Also, participant numbers are average. In the past, we've averaged about 40. I think we're trying to average around 30 right now in the virtual environment. The more recruitment you're able to do at your school, then you can see how that lowers the participant cost. The only cost that goes up with more participants can be the books and the curriculum there. We're able to customize by specific schools and district needs. And I've highlighted here the program roles in the budget that we leave in the budget to kind of give an idea of the way that people are incentivized in other community organizations. But very often in school environments and library environments, these highlighted roles, it's part of your site team's responsibilities to begin with. So this would be a cost that wouldn't apply to every situation. Note also that this sample includes training travel, which is not currently required. All of our training right now is virtual. And then I've put the note at the bottom there that for funding options, schools that have CLSD funds available can use those for family engagement, and then any other funding source that is allowable for family engagement from the LDOE can be applied to our programming. All right, and then family reading, you see that the cost is a little bit higher here because we have more books. We usually have 6 books within preschool and up to 11 books within family reading. Again, I've highlighted those roles that may be on your staff already. And again, that travel for training is not a cost that we currently have. One other thing that I did not highlight on both this example and the sample before, supplies and material stipends, that can either be something that you build into the budget with us and contract with us, or is something that you just have to make that you can include in your own building budget around the meals and the incentives that we recommend. And we can recommend what that supply stipend can be spent on and how it highlights the program. And then the final cost I wanted to share is with our Spark boxes. You see that preschool box is that birth to 5 years old and includes 6 books, enrichment materials, as well as the grown-up guide. And the family reading is 11 books with those same enrichment materials and a grown-up guide. The grown-up guide really allows for your families that may not be able to join by the internet or have other connectivity issues to have prime time in a box to really, really enable the family, the grown-ups in that family to not just read along with the books, but have the questions, have the big idea conversations, and extend through enrichment materials the learning around each book. The additional commercial that I wanted to share with everyone is we have a brand new rebranded website. And so we would invite you to explore more on our website, primetimefamily.org. You'll see a lot of the information that we provided you today there, but also there's more detail, of course. And we'd really like for you to really start thinking about how Primetime supports your literacy and family engagement goals. And if it does, and if you can find those connections, set up a time to discuss specific needs. As I said several times during the presentation, we pride ourselves on really being able to customize the core of our methodology and the core of our turnkey solution to meet your specific needs, to address what you have available budget-wise, and to determine your implementation schedule as well. I'm assuming most schools and districts right now are looking at their budgets for school year 21-22. But if there are needs prior to that, we are happy to discuss what might be available for you. Again, I am the main contact. You see my email there, and we'll also follow up with attendees with this information as well. All right, well, we look forward to, we're very excited about this opportunity as a newly approved vendor with LDOE. And we're just really hopeful for the ways that it can help schools make sure that primetime is something that they're able to offer their families. So please do reach out, and we can get into the specifics about how we can help you and your students and your school community get the most out of literature and out of connections with one another. Thank you all.